We know what you're thinking. Oh great, 15 minutes of that scene. Just what we want to hear during our lunch break. But don't worry, we don't focus too much on the banjo boy. The production of Deliverance, and the movie itself, is so much more than that one scene. You know the one. In the hot Georgia summer of 1972, production on Deliverance began, and it's a bit of a miracle anyone made it out alive. The dangerous stunts nearly killed the core cast, while the clash between the writer and director ended with one of them getting their teeth knocked out. And there were credit disputes, lawsuits, on-set intimidations, and so much more. Deliverance tells the oh-so-wholesome tale of four Atlanta businessmen and friends who head out for a boys' weekend in the Appalachian wilderness, particularly paddling along the fictional Cohahlawasi River before dams close off its fiercest rapids. Writer James Dickey was more of a poet prior to penning his debut novel Deliverance. The book was a major seller and would go on to be ranked by Time and Modern Library as one of the greatest novels of the century. Perhaps predictably, Warner Brothers greenlit production on a feature adaptation. Dickey wanted Sam Peckinpah to direct, as he was known for brutal, machismo-driven films up to that point, including the iconic western The Wild Bunch. Roman Polanski was also reportedly considered, but after the Battle of Cable Hogue's disastrous production put him on the wrong side of Warner Brothers execs, it cost him the project, along with Jeremiah Johnson. In came John Boorman, whose point blank solidifying him as a serious talent. With his hiring, the script could be written. While Dickey has sole screenwriting credit, it was indeed a collaboration between Dickey and Boorman, even if they wouldn't often be in the same room. With the script complete, Deliverance could be cast. This would seem the most appropriate time not to start with the marquee names, but rather a mostly unsung hero of the industry. Casting director Lynn Stallmaster, whose litany of highly regarded works over a 40-plus year career included Fiddler on the Roof, Superman, and Silver Streak. So let's give him due credit for the classic pairing of Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. And casting Martin Short as a 10-year-old in Clifford, stroke of genius. Stallmaster would go on to receive an honorary Oscar in 2016. Now, on to the cast. Experienced outdoorsman Lewis Medlock, and we know he's experienced because he doesn't wear sleeves, would be played by Burt Reynolds. Boorman initially wanted Marlon Brando, while both Charlton Heston and Donald Sutherland turned down the role. John Voight would play close friend and casual outdoorsman Ed. Dickey wanted Gene Hackman, while Boorman fought for Lee Marvin, who he directed in Point Blank. Jack Nicholson was also considered but priced out, although casting him and Burt Reynolds together would certainly have put more female keisters in the seat. Warren Beatty, Henry Fonda, and George C. Scott were also considered for roles. Pals and fellas who could probably fare better in a cubicle than a canoe, Drew Ballinger and Bobby Tripp, would be played by Ronnie Cox and Ned Beatty, respectively. Deliverance marked Beatty's film debut, and boy was he about to make a first impression. Deliverance was primarily shot in Georgia in the summer of 1971, with paddling scenes taking place on the Chattooga River, called the Cohahlawasi in the movie. The movie was shot in sequential order, something so rare for movies due to securing cast and locations. Co-star Ronnie Cox believed this was because of how the progressively difficult rapids were laid out on the river route, better outlining the men's dangerous journey. Burt Reynolds, however, had a different perspective. He figured that in case one of the actors was killed during the shoot, Boorman could just add it to the movie. It does seem that each primary cast member had their own brush with death. In fact, they did many of their own stunts, despite being mostly unfamiliar with the Appalachian surroundings. Fortunately, and we use that term quite loosely here, director John Boorman was a skilled outdoorsman and took opportunities to prove that as often as he could. If an actor complained about a stunt, he wouldn't shy from doing it himself, first saying, "It's very simple," before launching into the pummeling rapids. In one scene involving a particularly dangerous waterfall stunt, Reynolds took a cue from his director, suggesting he do the scene himself, rather than put a dummy in a canoe. Several injuries to the head, shoulder, and back later, Reynolds asked his director how it turned out on film. Boorman said bluntly, "It looked like a dummy falling over a waterfall." Ronnie Cox also got the bad end of a waterfall and later purposely dislocated his shoulder for his character's death scene. Try to do that, Boorman. John Voight also recalled the dangers of scaling water-soaked cliffs, while Ned Beatty nearly drowned in a heavy rush of water. Director John Boorman also suffered injuries, not at the hands of Mother Nature, but writer James Dickey. While shooting a canoe sequence, Dickey showed up on set quite shit-faced, ready to clash with Boorman over the evolution of the script, which Boorman was rewriting. Reportedly, Dickie's feelings had been brewing for some time, at one point asking one of the film's advisors at the bar, apparently a popular hangout for Dickie, "They're ruining my movie, ain't they?" When the writer confronted the director, the 6'3" Dickie won out, breaking Boorman's nose and knocking out 4 teeth. Hey, he would have fit right in with those hillbillies. This incident, paired with Dickie's incessant harassment of actor Ronnie Cox, got him a temporary ban from the set. When production wrapped, Dickie gave Voight, Reynolds, and Beatty each a Bowie knife. For Cox, a pocket knife. Burt Reynolds wasn't much of a fan of Dickie either, saying, quote, "After fighting the river, Dickie would have been a cinch." The two most famous, or perhaps infamous, scenes in Deliverance have helped push it into both notoriety and the realm of mockery. "Squeal like a pig" is one of the most notorious lines in 70s cinema, and that's saying something. But the line was neither in Dickie's novel or the screenplay. Credit is disputed, of course, with Ned Beatty laying claim, Dickie's son Christopher, who was a stand-in for Beatty during the scene, saying it was a crew member, and John Boorman giving credit to an on-set consultant. Whoever came up with the line played a major role in one of the most disturbing scenes in movies. The rape scene isn't just a difficult watch for audiences. Apparently, some crew members found it too excruciating to watch on the set. The scene, which took more than a day to shoot on a closed set, involves Ned Beatty, pretty mouth and all, being abused and raped by 2 hillbillies. Bill McKinney, credited as Mountain Man, went quasi-method here, trying to spook Beatty by staring at him non-stop during lunch breaks. This was something he actually learned from old Dernsey himself, Bruce Dern. Herbert Coward, credited as Toothless Man, had his own approach to freaking everyone out. While the printed line involved Beatty having a, quote, "real pretty mouth," Coward originally said, "I'm gonna lay a big, long right in your mouth." So, good change there. Coward was actually spotted by Burt Reynolds at a Wild West amusement park and knew he'd be perfect for the role. That's a backhanded, backwoods compliment if we've ever heard one. The other most famous scene in Deliverance is the dueling banjos one, in which Ronnie Cox has an impromptu jam session with a curious-looking boy played by high schooler Billy Redden. And talk about milking a performance, Redden would appear in just 4 other movies and TV shows, playing characters named either Banjo Man or Banjo Player. Clearly not meant for anything but stereotypes, Redden at one point worked at Walmart during his adult life. But Redden couldn't actually play the banjo, and so Boorman had an extra sleeve put in his shirt so a professional could play the frets while filming. The song, now synonymous with both the movie and Backwoods Sins, was an arrangement by Eric Weisberg and Steve Mandel. Listed as feudin' banjos in the credits, the number is actually a riff of a mid-50s bluegrass ditty by a fella named Arthur Guitar Boogie Smith. We guess because banjo boogie doesn't sound very hip? The uncredited Smith would file a lawsuit and win both credit and royalties, reportedly enough to buy a yacht. Still, he declined any credit on the soundtrack because he found the movie, quote, offensive. Interestingly, despite the use and constant reference to dueling banjos, music is scant in the film, with a few synthesizer pieces strewn about. Deliverance also had an alternate ending. It ended not with John Voight's nightmare of a hand emerging from the water, but with his Ed conjuring up a scene where a sheriff shows the survivors of the expedition an undetermined corpse. Warner Brothers was concerned about the box office potential of this thriller. According to Dickie, quote, "There's never been a film in the history of Hollywood without women in it that made a lot of money, but the studio need not worry. It may have taken a while, but Deliverance hit number 1 at the box office in November 1972, 4 months after its July 30th release. It went on to become one of the highest grossing movies of 1972, edging out porno flick Deep Throat. Hey, Dickie was kinda on to something there. 1 month after Deliverance hit number 1, Duelin' Banjos climbed its own chart, hitting number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 on the Adult Contemporary chart, because this was the 1970s and there were no rules. It was even nominated for a Golden Globe but lost to Ben from Ben. The movie earned 4 additional Golden Globe nominations: Best Motion Picture Drama, Best Director, Best Screenplay, and Best Actor for Jon Voight. It lost all 4 to The Godfather. Deliverance also earned 3 Academy Award nominations: Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Editing, losing the latter 2 to Cabaret and the highest honor to, again, The Godfather. The legacy of Deliverance lives on, for both good and bad. The movie does hold plenty of responsibility for encouraging the stereotype that all people from the region are dumb, toothless rapists. In reality, probably at least a few are, though. This remains something that irks many residents of Rabun County, Georgia, where the bulk of the movie was shot. It seems this has extended into many regions of the South, with novelty junk with phrases like "paddle faster, I hear banjo music" littering roadside shops. Still, it did increase tourism in Rabun County after the release. Did people not see the movie? It reportedly brings in $42 million every year as of 2012, the film's 40th anniversary. Rafting also became an extremely popular activity, pulling in $20 million annually. Still, not everyone is as manly as Burt Reynolds, and the U.S. Forest Service noted that 17 people were killed on the Chattooga River in the immediate years following the movie's release. The Chattooga would be marked as officially protected 2 years after Deliverance was released. Overall, as a result of the production, Georgia became a popular location to film movies, with future president, Georgia native, and noted peanut farmer Jimmy Carter establishing a film commission in the Peach State. Analyses have likened Deliverance's storyline to the Vietnam War, a hellish journey of outsiders invading something they are not prepared for. Considering the time of release and how things turn out for the misplaced men, it's a completely reasonable interpretation. But it plays best as the quintessential example of the survival film, depicting man's battle with nature and man himself. Deliverance, of course, wasn't the first of its kind, but its brutalities inspired numerous productions and wannabes. The best is probably 1977's Rituals. It too was apparently ripe for parody, with the rape scene being spoofed in multiple movies and TV shows, many of which are, curiously enough, cartoons. Despite the questionable jokes, Deliverance's legacy is everlasting as one of the finest movies of the early 1970s. The movie, which undoubtedly borders on horror, was named as the 15th most thrilling movie ever made by the American Film Institute. In 2008, the Library of Congress's National Film Registry marked it as culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant, and in the same year as the sex life of the polyp, no less. Now that's something to squeal about. Deliverance seems to have gotten unjustly pigeonholed, not unlike the region in which it takes place, but it is a true classic of the thriller genre and American 70s cinema, which came at the expense of its cast, crew, and culture, with minor characters endorsing stereotypes, 4 actors facing death on a daily basis, and a director losing more teeth than a sadist hillbilly. Not all sadist hillbillies, of course.
Let us know your thoughts. Leave a comment in the comments, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for clicking on our video, everybody. If you like what you saw here, make sure you like the video and subscribe and share with your friends who like this sort of content. We're an independent company, and we appreciate all of your support.